up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We start with former Vice Premier Cheng Wen-Tsan back at a district court after his bail was revoked a second time. The politician from the ruling DPP is accused of corruption during his role as mayor of Taoyuan City from 2014 to 2022. Joyce Sung is live for us at the courthouse in Taoyuan with the latest. Joyce, what are we expecting to happen today?
Well, you just about missed him, Louise. Moments ago, former Vice Premier Cheng Wen-Tsan arrived here at the Taoyuan District Court. This is the third bail hearing for the well-known politician amid an investigation into whether he took bribes while he was Taoyuan mayor. Now, today, with tighter security, Cheng and his lawyers walked swiftly past media and into the hearing room. But just 2 days ago, Cheng left this courthouse after being granted bail of over $360,000 US. That's more than double the amount, the first bail sum that he paid on Sunday. And with each release so far, the prosecutors have successfully gotten the High Court to overturn these decisions. The High Court says that questions still remain unanswered as to why the lower court have allowed bail, especially given that there is the possibility of collusion between Cheng and other suspects, especially given Cheng's influence in city government.
And Joyce, what is the district court's position so far? What are the chances it'll grant Cheng bail again?
Well, after releasing Cheng on Tuesday, the court said that it found no evidence to justify detaining him. They also doubted whether he still had influence in city government and dismissed concerns about collusion. They said that the only other person related to the case who has been granted bail is a 90-year-old suspect. Others are still in custody, signaling that the court thought that the chances of collusion are low. Now, this is turning into a battle of wills between the prosecutors and the district court, when given that without new evidence before the trial begins, this back and forth can keep going. This current record for such a situation is 5 rulings and 5 appeals. 10 years ago, a man rammed his truck into the presidential office gate, and after 5 rounds of hearings, he was finally released on bail. As for Cheng, the big question here today is whether he will get his 3rd release on bail and at what price. Louise?
Thank you, Joyce. We'll have more updates as this hearing goes on. That was Joyce Sung live for us from the Taoyuan District Court. Taiwan's Defense Ministry says it's detected 66 Chinese military aircraft and 7 naval vessels around the country since Wednesday morning. 56 of the aircraft either crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait or entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. That's tied for the highest number of incursions in a single day since the ministry began tracking such activity in 2020. The last time that many Chinese aircraft crossed into the ADIZ was nearly 3 years ago. This area is not Taiwan's sovereign airspace, but is used by its military for defensive purposes. The military has sent aircraft and vessels in response to the incursions. Taiwan's foreign minister says the country must be vigilant against China's efforts to poach diplomatic allies.
就这12个邦交国来讲，目前是稳定的状态。好，那当然我们不能掉以轻心，因为中共是对外交上面，它有非常多的这个施压。
Lin Jialong said that Nauru's decision to switch recognition from Taipei to Beijing had caused the government to re-evaluate its relations with remaining allies. He said plans were now being prepared for new President Lai Ching-te to make his first state visits abroad, including a potential stopover in the United States. 2 people have been shot outside a sauna in Taipei's Datong district. One of the victims is thought to be the former chair of a company with links to organized crime. The Taipei Fire Department says it received a distress call early Wednesday evening, but it says the victims had already left for the hospital when emergency workers arrived. Police say the suspected shooter, a 33-year-old man surnamed Peng, turned himself in. They're now investigating. This year's NATO summit in Washington, D.C. has wrapped up its second day with a declaration promising more aid and eventual membership for Ukraine. Leaders also condemned China and North Korea for supplying the Russian war effort in Ukraine. Chris Gorin reports.
After the second day of this year's NATO summit, leaders from member states and partners were invited to the White House, where U.S. President Joe Biden treated them to performances and hospitality that belied the serious events of the day. Once again, much of the summit's activity focused on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The country's President Volodymyr Zelensky spent the day meeting with world leaders and top U.S. lawmakers, seeking more aid and a fast path to NATO membership. And the alliance made clear that it was committed to that same goal.
As Ukraine continues its vital reforms, we will continue to support them on their irreversible path to NATO membership. When the time is right, Ukraine can join without delay. It is not a question of if, but when.
NATO members pledged a further 40 billion euros to Ukraine and other additional concrete commitments of military aid.
And I'm also pleased to announce that as we speak, the transfer of F-16 jets is underway, coming from Denmark, coming from the Netherlands, and those jets will be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer.
Concerns about Ukraine extended beyond Europe and the North Atlantic. NATO members condemned countries like North Korea and China for their role in supplying the Russian war effort.
China provides dual-use equipment, microelectronics, a lot of other tools which are enabling Russia to build the missiles, to build the bombs, to build the aircraft, to build the weapons they are using to attack Ukraine.
Security concerns are even bringing together countries like Japan and South Korea, which have had a rocky relationship in the past. As two of NATO's 4 Indo-Pacific partners, the countries' leaders met on the sidelines of the summit, expressing concern about the cooperation between North Korea and Russia, and calling the security of the Atlantic and Indo-Pacific inseparable. With one day left in this historic summit, the leaders of the world's largest security alliance and their partners are using every opportunity to affirm their ties and the commitment to the safety of its current and future allies. Delphine Chen and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
With the United States providing military support for conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, some are questioning whether it can also engage in Asia. That's why many analysts say preventing war in the Indo-Pacific is key to US strategy. To learn more, reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Rob York, Director of Regional Affairs at the Pacific Forum, based in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Looking at how the Asia-Pacific is structured, the security environment there, can you kind of explain what threats allies and partners are facing in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, there's no doubt that the PRC is an area of concern, and it has definitely taken actions. I mean, there's a lot of focus on Taiwan, of course, but I think the area that has a lot of people concerned right now is the Philippines. So that is a country, a situation that people are going to be watching closely to see how that develops, and hopefully it doesn't cross very specific red lines, but they want to be prepared in case it does. China, of course, is not the only issue, but tailoring it around common, say, values and responses to common contingencies of varying sorts is always a more unifying tactic than singling out any particular country.
Is there a priority, though, in Asia, in the Indo-Pacific? You know, some analysts say that leading up to the U.S. election, we could see more activity coming out of North Korea in terms of weapons tests, but then there's the pacing challenge that people call, that is Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. Do you see any sort of priority that the U.S. and allies are looking to in the Indo-Pacific?
North Korea is, of course, always there, and North Korea is doing provocative things like testing missiles and testing new weapon systems and just doing things that kind of provoke the South Korean people unnecessarily. And it's doing that at a rate that in the past would have definitely made headlines and raised tensions quite a bit. But because it has become so normalized in a sense, and because China is there as the overarching pacing threat, the activities that North Korea has been up to in recent months have kind of been in the background instead. So yes, China is definitely the thing that has more people on edge at the moment.
And given the way that the world right now is kind of trying to grapple with two conflicts, one in Europe, one in the Middle East, some countries have expressed concern that, you know, a third conflict in Asia could spread the United States too thin. Do you think that concern is valid? Is that being spread across the Asia-Pacific region?
Yes, there are definitely concerns about the U.S. industrial base and its ability to support multiple conflicts at once. If there's too much of an expansion in, say, the war in the Middle East, then that would be a considerable strain on the U.S.'s resources if it were compelled to continue to support Israel in that instance, even as it supports Ukraine, especially given the political struggles that have been dividing Congress over the funding for Ukraine, and not just for them, but for other partners as well. So an additional conflict in the Indo-Pacific would absolutely put a strain on that. Thankfully, it would put a strain on certain other countries that are prone to causing such conflicts, and that's why we are, for the moment, on guard, but not convinced that it's imminent.
That was Rob York from the Pacific Forum speaking to Jaime Ocon. Stay tuned as we continue coverage of the RIMPAC exercises this week. A legal battle is brewing at Taiwan's Constitutional Court. Judges are weighing whether to put an emergency brake on new powers lawmakers have given themselves. John Van Trieste has this report.
The 15 justices of the Constitutional Court have a bitter dispute to resolve. The opposition-controlled legislature has voted to give itself several new powers. These include the power to invite the president, to give them an annual address followed by questions. And there's also the power to make officials testify, with fines or jail time if they refuse or don't give out information. Opponents, who say these powers erode democracy, have rallied in Taipei. And now they're taking legal action, too. The executive branch, controlled by the ruling DPP, is among those asking the court to put an emergency brake on these new powers. But lawmakers haven't actually tried to use many of them yet. So the first question is whether they should hear arguments based on hypotheticals, what lawmakers might do.
机关宪法诉讼必须就行使职权跟所适用的法规范内容抵触宪法才能申请。那我们主张总统申请不合法。
君庭要思考的事情其实很简单，就是到底违宪可不可以一下下一点点就好？我想答案是清楚的，就是不可以。
And there's also the question of whether these new powers warrant urgent action.
总统不来立法院，什么事也不能干。
因为一旦总统被邀请到了国情报告，到立法院复国情报告，会发生什么事情，没有人能够担保，而这正是急迫性。
Whatever the justices decide, debate over whether these new legislative powers are constitutional doesn't end there. The battle over whether to freeze the powers temporarily is just the first move in what promises to be a lengthy legal battle. Alex Cheng and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Baseball star Cheng has signed the biggest contract in Taiwan's professional league history. His 3.5-year contract with the Fubon Guardians is worth $2.8 million. Cheng is hailed as the best hitter in Taiwan's baseball history. He played in the U.S. Major League for 5 years, setting several hitting records for Taiwanese players, including 20 home runs. Cheng is set to play his first game with the Guardians on Friday night against the Uni Lions. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Louise Watt. Take care. We'll see you next time.